was on a date with Martha's brother. So we double dated. He was older, and he had a driver's license, so he could drive. So we went on double date, and I got to
with opposite people.
yeah, and that's when I first, I guess, noticed her, when we were double dating that way, and then we started kind of talking to each other in class at school, or and then started getting to the gym earlier so we could
Talk before.
talk before the game started. And then that winter in December, they practiced in there at the church on their Christmas cantata, and she was singing in it. She was up practicing, and she invited me to come to it, and I did. I went to the Christmas cantata, and after it was over, we drove around a little bit, and then I don't know. It was probably a few weeks. We were, of course, into the basketball season at that time, and we'd sit together on the bus on the basketball trips, talk. So that's the way it all started.
Okay. And that was what grade?
We were sophomores
Sophomores.
in high school. Like I say, she was either 15 or 16. Probably 15, would have been 16 after that Christmas cantata, because her birthday was in March. So she would have been 16 in March. I was 16, and I became 17 in November. So I guess I was 17 when we started really getting kind of serious with each other.
So do you remember your first date?
First date?
Do you remember it?
Well,
Or was it like just
if
a
you
group?
want to call it a date,
Yeah.
it was getting out and riding around after that Christmas cantata was
Okay.
over with.
Okay.
We got out and rode around.
Yeah.
So that was our first date together. Yeah. And
So
it was
when did you become officially a couple? Like everybody knew that was your girlfriend and you were her boyfriend?
that would have been after the Christmas holidays.
Okay.
That when I was 17, she was 16 then. Well, that after that,
Yeah.
I'd already turned 17, and she turned 16.
Okay.
So that was we were at the end of our sophomore year in school, and we were starting at junior year, the next fall. But the end of the sophomore year is when we started really dating and became a couple, and became known as Bird and Lady Bird.
Oh yeah.
I had a nickname of Bird.
Right.
So then they started calling her Lady Bird.
Yep. I remember that. I do remember that.
Yeah. And they called me Bird because I could jump so high. I was not the tallest on our basketball team, but I could out jump any of them.
Gotcha.
So I jumped center when they
Oh wow.
when they
Yeah.
started the game.
Yeah.
So they said I could fly, so they called me Bird.
Gotcha.
Since I could jump so high I could fly, and they started calling her Lady Bird then after we started going steady.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, of course, we were always together riding the bus on the basketball trips. She was an outstanding basketball player. I was captain of the basketball team my junior year for the boys. She was captain of the team, I think, for the girls. So.
But her mama didn't like you.
Well, no. Her mother, I guess it was the summer, yeah. of between our junior and senior year. It was that summer. Her mother thought things were getting too thick, too serious. And so she stopped her. She told her she couldn't go date me anymore. So during that summer, between our junior and senior year, we had to slip around to date, and it couldn't be even known by our friends because we're afraid it'd get back to her mother. So we would meet somewhere and drive off, and, where nobody could see us. Now, some of our closer friends knew it, I'm sure, but they wouldn't say anything.
But since it was in the summertime, y'all could probably get away with it easier.
Yeah, and in the summertime, we was out of school, so. But the thing about it, they were having parties out at Natchez Trace at that time, State Park, where the swimming hole and everything was, good swimming area. And her mother had told her, if Jerry goes, you can't go. So I would not go with the group. If I went, I'd show up later.
Yeah.
But I couldn't go with the group. She'd have to tell her mother that I wasn't going.
Yeah.
Or her mom wouldn't let her go. Then I brought some of that on myself, I guess. Her mother thought I was kind of wild because I'd drive the car around. They lived on a corner, and I made that corner, and it's a gravel road. And I made that block and turned on their street. I'd hit second gear and just sling gravel everywhere, with the tires spinning sometimes. So I'm sure Miss Burton, that helped form her opinion of me. Because she didn't hear anything bad about me because I didn't do anything bad, But I'm sure that's what one of the things that while driving, and she'd heard about me taking the car over into the Chesterfield Bottom area there where we'd race cars. Everybody that got a different car would come over there to race. The boys from Lexington and the boys from Parsons. My dad had bought a 1950 Ford, and nobody ever beat me. I mean, that was a running dude. And we'd go across there. It was a 2-mile stretch that was level.
I know exactly where it is. You showed us many times.
Yep. And man, I pegged that 100 mile an hour. Actually, the speedometer would register a little bit. It'd go beyond the 100 mark. That was all that was on it.
Yeah.
But that needle would go beyond that. And I put her down there and let her go. And nobody ever beat me. So I'm sure she'd heard about that. That probably helped her form her decision too, that I was wild. But anyhow, then in the beginning, at the end of summer, I don't know what changed, but at the end of summer, her mother changed her mind somehow. And I'm thinking, drove by up there one day and just stopped the car out, and Betty came out to the car and we were talking, and her mother came out. So I got out of the car and went up there and talked to Miss Burton. We just had a good little visit. And that may have been it, that she decided I might not be as bad as she thought I was. But anyway, she stopped her thinking of not letting her go with me at that time. And so we dated then during our senior year of high school. I mean, we were a close couple,
Yeah.
Everybody thought we would get married as soon as we got out of high school. And we probably would have if I hadn't joined the Navy. But the Korean War was going on. I was afraid I was going to get drafted in the Army. And I had some friends in my family that had been in the Navy, and they talked me into joining the Navy, and I did.
Didn't want to get married before you went?
And we talked about it,
Mm-hmm.
and decided she was going to Memphis to UT Dental Hygiene School, and we talked about we'll wait till we get both finished school, then we'll get married. But she finished 2 years. That's all you had to go for dental hygiene, and I was in the Navy 4 years. So during that time, I guess it was right before she was about to finish her schooling, because she was still in Memphis at the time. We broke up for, oh, I don't know, a while. Uh, she, I knew they were having parties at University of Tennessee Science Medical uh, section at that time at the end of school, and I told her, you just go on and go to the dance with whoever you want to go with, and that'll be okay. Because I had dated a girl a couple of times that lived in Alto, Texas, just out of Houston. So anyway, we kind of parted ways there for uh, a period of time there, and I came in for Christmas, and went home, and on my way back, I stopped in Memphis. I'd bought a car then, and I was driving. I was stationed in Corpus Christi, Texas. So I was on my way back to Texas, and I left a little early in the afternoon. I'd drive all night long, get down there, and stay home as long as I could. But I stopped in Memphis. And in fact, there was a girl in Memphis that lived close to Parsons that I was supposed to meet her for a date up there, but I didn't make it. Uh, but I stopped at where Betty, the students there had rooms with certain homes that had rooms that they rent out to students. Well, I stopped there where she's living, and just to speak, say hello, what have you. So she came out, and we drove out and went to a drive-in restaurant type thing that you served. And I didn't make any effort to patch things up or anything. And I remember reading later on, I read it in her diary. She says, Jerry came by tonight, and we went out for a ride to drive into a restaurant, and said, he's a changed boy. He's not like he used to be. He's changed. And that's because I didn't, when I left, that dropped her off back up at her where she's living. Uh, I didn't, I made no emotional thing at all. Didn't kiss her or anything, just dropped her off and said, well, I'll maybe see you later on next trip home or whatever. And away I went. So that's what she wrote in her diary. She says, I think it may be all over. And so that probably lasted till my next trip that I got leave to go home. Before I was being transferred overseas. I was going to Jacksonville, Florida first, in a squadron that I'd been assigned to, and then we were going back to the West Coast and go to the Far East. But on my way through, I stopped, and she'd already completed school, and she was working. Actually was working in Nashville as a dental hygienist. And I stopped up there, and we went out, and we got things all patched up. And I went on to Jacksonville, and I got a long weekend pass, and I came back into Nashville, and stayed there a couple of days, and that's when we decided that yeah, it's the real thing, and we're not gonna break up again, and we're gonna get married when I get out of the Navy. So I left there going back to Jacksonville, and our squadron moved to the West Coast to San Diego area, and board an aircraft carrier, and we went to the Far East. So after I got discharged, then came back in May of in the States, got back in the States in May of 1956, and we married in June. She had since moved to Knoxville and had gotten a job as a dental hygienist, because in our correspondence and everything, we decided that I'm going to UT after I get out. I go on a GI Bill, so I'm going to UT. So she went on up there and got a job there in Knoxville, knowing that that's where we'd be living as soon as I got out and we got married.
Yep.
So that's kind of
how it planned out.
That's kind of the way that worked out. Yeah. But yeah, I remember we were down at the river at the lake when I was a senior in high school, and of course Betty and I dated full time then anyway. And I told some of the boys down there that we were in a boat slip there, changing from our clothes to our bathing suit, and I remember telling them she and the girls were sitting outside. They already had their swimsuits on. They were outside sitting up on a kind of a fence-like thing, a rail, and Betty looked so pretty sitting up there, man. I'm telling you, she always had a good tan, had a
I know that's right.
olive complexion anyway, and tan. She looked great sitting up there in that those shorts and everything. And I says, that's the girl right there I'm going to marry. And
and you did.
So be it. That's what happened.
Yep.
So, anyway.
So she worked while you went to UT.
She worked at the dental office in Fountain City, and right out in Knoxville, part of a suburb of Knoxville. And I worked pretty much full time too, and went to school. Mm-hmm. I worked at Miller's Department Store in Knoxville. It was a big department store, sold a little everything, clothes, little jewelry, whatever. It was right uptown. So I worked there a lot. Went to school, of course, on GI Bill. They were paying part of my schooling, and I was paying the rest of it. I had to buy my books. They paid all the tuition. The government paid the military from a veterans thing. They paid all the tuition. All I had to do is buy my books. But of course, we had to pay for a place to live, everything, apartment. But then I got a job with Southern Railway part-time. I was working at night. I feel what I did, there's always somebody off on leave or sick, and I'd fill in for them. And whoever I filled in for, I got their rate of pay for whatever time I worked on there. Mm-hmm. So some of those guys been there a long time. They were out sick. They were making good money. And when I went in there and replaced them for temporarily until they got back, I got that rate of pay. I was making real good money there. I bought a brand new 1957 Oldsmobile while I was going to school at UT. I was making, that's kind of money. Paid for it. And of course, Betty, like I say, Betty had a good job. She made good money as a dental hygienist. So we didn't have to struggle real bad, real hard. We made it with her working and me working both. and getting my money from the GI Bill on for my tuition. We got along pretty good. So, Knoxville days were good days. We'd go to the mountains on weekends, picnicking, good group up there. We joined Baptist church there, and had some great friends in the church. So we had a wonderful time all during the time we lived in Knoxville. I really enjoyed it.
It's a beautiful area.
And then we moved back. I didn't have a job. When I finished school, I'd interviewed for a job. I went over to Winston-Salem, North Carolina, interviewed with R.J. Reynolds, and they offered me a job, but it was on me on a night shift, and I was going to have to move to Winston-Salem, and I didn't want to do that, so I turned it down. Then this is while I was still in school and interviewing. Then I interviewed for a job with Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company in Gadsden, Alabama. Same as a management, was supposed to would have worked into a management position, but their management trainees were all on the night shift. Well, we had a little daughter then. We had Kim, and I didn't want to have to leave. Move to Gadsden, Alabama, leave Betty and Kim there at night by themselves, and me working a night shift for. They said it took me about 2 years you'd have to work it before you ever got seniority enough to move off of it. So I turned that job down too. So we ended up moving back to Parsons, and I worked with agricultural agency during the summer on a temporary basis till I got the job with Harvey Aluminum, which they had the contract at Milan, and we moved to Milan.
Where'd you live in Parsons?
We lived, fortunately, there was a lady that owned a home, and she had passed away and left it. Her daughter had it, and had been converted into a duplex. There were 2 apartments in it, and it was right next door to Mom and Dad.
Oh.
I mean, right next door, next house up from where Mom and Dad lived. And so
where they lived on the main.
Not the brick home, the one they lived before they moved out.
Yeah, the one closer into town.
The one that's a real estate company
Yes.
in it now.
Okay,
Yeah.
So it was right next to that?
It was right next to it.
Okay.
So we lived in an apartment, and our yard on that side of that duplex joined the yard of my Mom and Dad.
Wow. I did not know that.
Yeah. So we were right there.
And how long were you there?
We were there, as through the summer of 1960. I graduated in March of 61, and we were there through the summer of 61, which I worked for the ASC office, that Agricultural Stabilization Organization, there around Decatur County. Then I guess it was probably along about September, October of that year that I got that job in Milan, and we moved to an apartment in Milan. And yeah.
And was
Kim,
Mom working at that point?
Huh?
Did she work when you moved to Milan?
She wasn't working. No.
Okay.
No,
She didn't start.
Kim was little,
Yeah.
you know.
But she didn't start working until y'all moved to Jackson.
She didn't work till we
After
went
I
to
was
Jackson.
born.
Yeah. Actually, that's the reason we moved to Jackson. When we moved to Milan, Kim was about probably getting close to 2 years old. So we stayed in Parsons we must have stayed in Parsons for a year. No.
No, because
Kim was born in 61.
I was born in
March of 61.
Yeah.
So when we moved to Milan, Kim was
She was 1.
Kim was not a year old.
I was gonna say she's
She's 1 year old.
Yeah, closing in on it.
That next March,
Yeah.
after we moved to Milan. Yeah. All right, we lived there in that apartment, I guess, for close to 2.5 years, because you were born while we were living in Milan.
Okay.
We living in that apartment. My grandmother came and stayed with us to help with Betty, with Kim and you. Betty was not working.
Okay.
And after you was probably, I don't know, you were just a few months old when we moved to Jackson. Betty decided she'd go back to work. And there were a shortage of dental hygienists in the Jackson area at the time, and several dentists had called her because her name came up somehow. She had a friend lived in Jackson that put her name out, and they were in the UT Dental Hygiene School together. And so they called Betty, a couple of different ones at least, and wanted her to come to work. So she went over and talked with one of them about it, and the offer was pretty good. So she decided she'd go back to work. So when she came back and talked to me about it, I said, okay, if you're going to work, we'll just move to Jackson, because I don't want you to have to drive back and forth from Milan. I'll do the driving back and forth over here to my job, but you'll be in Jackson. So I went over looking for a house, found the one
which is perfect on the north side, on the Milan side of town.
Yeah, it's on the north side of town, so I could just slip right out of there and go to work. I could be at my work within 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And then her office where she was working at, the dental office, was also over on that side.
Mm-hmm.
It was over on Forest.
Mm.
So she was just a few blocks from where she worked.
Yeah.
And so that's the way we ended up in Jackson.
Yeah.
And you were just a few months old.
Yeah. But I was born in the Jackson Hospital.
You was born in the Jackson Hospital.
Yeah.
Yeah. And but we were still living in Milan at the time.
Yeah. Well, all right.